Imagine a world where you cannot drink from the same water fountain as another person, simply because of the color of your skin. Imagine being told that your children cannot sit in the same classroom, eat in the same restaurant, or ride in the same seat on a bus. This was not a distant, fictional dystopia. This was America, in the 20th century. But then, from the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, a young preacher stood up. Not with a weapon in his hand. Not with an army behind him. But with a voice so powerful, it shook the conscience of an entire nation. His name was Martin Luther King Jr., a man who dared to dream when dreaming itself was dangerous. A man who walked into the fire of hatred and came out carrying the torch of hope. In a time when silence was the safest option, he chose to speak. In a time when running away was easier, he chose to march forward. This is the story of a crusader, not of war, but of liberation. A story that did not begin on a stage, but on the streets. A story that did not end with his death, because the dream he planted still grows today. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, into a black family during one of the darkest chapters of American history. Segregation was not just a policy, it was a way of life, enforced by law, reinforced by violence, and accepted by a society that had normalized cruelty. From childhood, Martin saw the ugliness of racism with his own eyes. He saw "whites only" signs on water fountains and restaurant doors. He saw black men and women humiliated in public with no one to defend them. He saw fear written on the faces of his own community, a fear born from generations of oppression. Yet his father, a Baptist minister, instilled in him something more powerful than fear: dignity, self-respect, and faith. After graduating with a doctorate in theology from Boston University, Martin returned to the South, not because it was safe, but because it was where the fight was needed. He became a pastor in Montgomery, Alabama, walking straight into the center of the storm. And the storm came swiftly. In 1955, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white passenger. The black community was outraged, but this time, they had a leader. Martin organized the Montgomery bus boycott, urging thousands of black citizens to refuse to ride city buses for 381 days. The boycott crippled the transit system economically and ultimately led to the desegregation of buses. But it also made Martin a target. His house was bombed. His family was threatened. Anonymous death threats arrived in the mail daily. The FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, surveilled him constantly and tried to discredit him at every turn. He was arrested multiple times. Attacked by mobs. Stabbed by a mentally ill woman at a book signing. He walked every single day knowing he might not return home alive. The weight of leading a movement, while being a husband, a father, a preacher, was immense. There were nights of deep doubt. Moments of exhaustion and fear. He was not a fearless superhero. He was a human being who chose courage over comfort, again and again, even when it nearly broke him. By 1963, the civil rights movement had been building for years: protests, marches, sit-ins, legal battles, but the nation had not yet been forced to truly look at itself. That moment came in Birmingham, Alabama, considered the most segregated city in America at the time, and it would change everything. When Martin and the SCLC launched protests in Birmingham, the city's Commissioner of Public Safety, Bull Connor, responded with fire hoses and police dogs against peaceful demonstrators, including children. Images of young black boys and girls being slammed against walls by powerful water jets and attacked by snarling German shepherds flashed across television screens around the world. America, and the world, was horrified. The mask had slipped. Segregation was no longer abstract. It was brutal, and everyone could see it. During this campaign, Martin was arrested and thrown into solitary confinement. There, in a dark jail cell, he wrote one of the most powerful political documents in American history, the Letter from Birmingham Jail. Addressed to fellow clergymen who had called his protests unwise and untimely, he wrote with extraordinary clarity, moral depth, and controlled anger. He declared that justice delayed is justice denied. That one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. The letter was smuggled out on scraps of paper and published worldwide. It electrified the movement. Then came August 28, 1963, the March on Washington. Over 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial, the largest political demonstration in American history at that time. Standing before that sea of humanity, with the weight of centuries of suffering behind him, Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. His words transcended protest, they became prophecy. He spoke of a future where his children would be judged not by the color of their skin but by the content of their character. The speech moved the world to tears and galvanized political will. The following year, 1964, the Civil Rights Act was signed into law, banning discrimination based on race, color, religion, or national origin. And in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, securing the right to vote for Black Americans. These were not gifts. They were victories, carved out by blood, sacrifice, and the unbreakable will of a movement, and of one extraordinary man at its center. That same year, Martin received the Nobel Peace Prize, becoming the youngest recipient at the age of 35. On April 4, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. stepped out onto the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, and was assassinated by a sniper's bullet. He was just 39 years old. The world erupted in grief. Cities across America burned in riots. The man who had dedicated his life to nonviolence died by violence. And yet, in a way that only the greatest lives can, his death did not mark the end of his story, it marked its transformation into something eternal. Martin's legacy did not merely survive, it multiplied. The laws he fought for reshaped American society in ways that would have been unimaginable just a generation earlier. The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act dismantled the legal architecture of segregation. His insistence on nonviolent resistance became a blueprint for liberation movements across the globe, from anti-apartheid activists in South Africa to democracy protesters in Eastern Europe and beyond. Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu. Even Gandhi's movement, though earlier, echoed in King's philosophy. In 1983, the United States Congress established Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a federal holiday, celebrated every third Monday of January. His face was placed on postage stamps. Statues and monuments rose in his honor. Schools, streets, and institutions across the world were named after him. But perhaps the most profound monument to his legacy was the election of Barack Obama as the 44th President of the United States in 2008, a moment millions saw as the direct fulfillment of King's dream, exactly 45 years after the March on Washington. His words continue to live in every protest sign held up against injustice. His courage lives in every activist who chooses peace over retaliation. His faith lives in every generation that dares to believe a better world is possible. Martin Luther King Jr. did not just fight for civil rights. He fought for the idea that every human being, regardless of race, religion, or background, carries infinite worth and deserves to live in dignity. He once said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." He was not just a leader. He was not just a dreamer. He was, and remains, a crusader for liberation. And as long as injustice exists anywhere in the world, his dream is still marching forward.